Chapter 51. Inside the silent palace, the head attendant who had stationed Kishir and the cavalry members outside the door politely knocked before entering. This place was eerily quiet, void of even the typical sight of a guard knight. Could this really be the residence of an emperor of an empire? A silent question sprouted in everyone's gaze. Considering Kishir doesn't usually carry a servant around, having only Nathan Zuckerman by his side, it's possible there's something in common between the brothers. Yudhir also made a plausible conjecture amidst the silence. His Majesty has granted an audience. Please come in. Moments later, the door opened and the head attendant reappeared. Kishir strode into the room that the head attendant opened. The members all followed him, and only Nathan Zuckerman, who had been quietly following the group, naturally remained outside the door. Walking just behind Kishir, Yudhir quickly surveyed the surroundings. The place seemed designed for maximum efficiency, allowing all work to be done within a single space. Beneath a window pouring bright light, there was an office desk neatly arranged with pens of various types. Next to it, a stack of mixed scrolls and documents exuded a strong scent of dry paper. Behind what appeared to be an arch-shaped partition installed to divide the space, a curtained bed was seen, and next to it, a table with black tea giving off unique aroma. It seemed a place where eating, sleeping, and working could happen all at once. And the owner of the palace, the emperor, sat in the high backed chair, placed not anywhere special, but under the wall, ready to greet them. You have arrived. I sense an unusual energy. It might be best not to come any closer. Upon hearing the emperor's voice, Kishir halted, and all the members silently bowed their heads. The emperor coughed a few times before slowly continuing. Under normal circumstances, I would have received you at the seventh palace and honored you in the most glorious way. But I hope you understand that I had to see you here. Being able to complete the mission you entrusted us is honor enough, Kishir elegantly replied, taking a knee and bowing his head. The cavalry members, who were utterly surprised by the unexpected scenery, quickly followed suit, kneeling. Good. Raise your heads. After a moment, the emperor quietly commanded them to raise their heads. Finally, Yudhir got a good look at the emperor's face. He seemed less like a ruler and more like a scholar who had been immersed in research for a long time. His features bore a striking resemblance to Kishir's, but the atmosphere he exuded was entirely different. While Kishir was tall and solid, exuded an air of composure with his lazy smile, the emperor appeared sensitive, his thin figure hidden behind glasses, his eyes tired, and not even a trace of smile. He certainly wasn't as radiant as Kishir. Nevertheless, he didn't seem to be so sick as to be incapable of handling state affairs, as was publicly known. But why? While observing him, Yudhir felt a certain premonition from his tired appearance. Seems like I have seen a sight similar somewhere. At that moment, the emperor slightly turned his head to briefly survey Yudhir's face. In an instant, Yudhir understood the nature of the sensation he'd felt. It was the same feeling he'd had from Kishir in the dream the previous night, and now the emperor bore the same aura. His hair and eyes, once lustrous, now lacked their sheen. His face, as white as a bonfire on the verge of being extinguished, had lost all its light, leaving only ashes behind. For a fleeting moment, the emperor looked eerily similar to the dream's version of Kishir, who had lost all of his brilliance and was standing on the precipice of death. Why was that? The moment Yidhir opened his mouth to voice this peculiar sensation, the emperor slowly began to speak again. Merely by observing your aura, I can believe that beloved Duke Paletta had completed his task perfectly. I am overjoyed to finally have what I have long sought. Even as he spoke of joy, there was no trace of amusement in Emperor's eyes. It was questionable whether his smile wasn't entirely stolen by Keshir, his brother. After finishing his speech, the emperor took a long breath and scrutinized the faces of the 5 cavalry members. I have wanted to get my hands on it since it fell 2 years ago, but no one was successful. Court mages, the valiant knights of the Imperial Guard, and even secretly hired mercenaries all failed. But only one person, Duke Paletta, was confident of success. That is, if he was provided assistance in assembling those awakened by the power of the Redstone into a cavalry. Why bring up such old stories? Keshir chuckled lowly, pretending to chide the emperor, but the emperor ignored him and continued his tale. I didn't believe it at first, but now, after 2 years, today, the Duke really bought it before me. You all must have contributed to this, no doubt. We are humbled. On behalf of everyone, the Khanate responded with a slightly trembling voice. He was genuinely moved by the situation. I do not forget those who have worked for me. I will grant each of you five the title of Knight Award, 10 high-grade magic stones of Northern Mountain, and establish a training ground for the cavalry. Even those who were not knights could receive the title of the knight. The youngest court mages usually started from this title and gradually received higher ranks. But to not only grant a last name to all the cavalry members, but also bestow titles upon those who bought the red stone, it was indeed an unprecedented honor. Even Kana, who had been so tense since arriving at the Imperial Palace that she hadn't been able to lift her head, couldn't hide her surprise at the moment. We are humbled. Your Majesty, the reward you have given my subordinates is extremely generous, but you have forgotten the most important thing. Shouldn't you give a reward to me, who took responsibility for the beginning and end of everything? Keshir, who had been quietly listening, smoothly interrupted as soon as the awards were over. Even though they were brothers, it was audacious for him to speak so lightly to the emperor. The cavalry members were worried that the emperor might get angry, but that didn't happen. The emperor pushed his glasses, made a silver and lapis lazuli thread up to bridge of his nose, only slightly furrowing his brow as he looked at the smiling Duke. Duke Paletta, you have already received much help from me over the past 2 years. Isn't that enough? It is not enough. Did you not hear the report of over 10 unidentified awakened beasts storming into my residence? The report that the redstone had exploded? I risked my life to bring this here, so give me more. Gakane swallowed hard at the audacious tone. The elder siblings subtly sent looks of admiration. Kana tense bowed her head, and Yidhir quietly observed Keshir's bewitching smile. The emperor, who had been glaring at Keshir, sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose. Fatigue had further accumulated on his face. Very well, tell me what you want so badly that you are begging so shamelessly. I want time. Time? The emperor questioned back, puzzled. Yes, I want to examine this further. Yidhir's heart beat rapidly for a moment. Keshir maintained the most composed expression, looking only straight ahead. The emperor opened his mouth, indicating his incomprehension. Haven't you already observed it more closely than anyone else during the recovery mission? Your task was to retrieve it, not to investigate it. Such a task should be given to the mages. It's too risky to entrust it to someone who has never done such work. Oh, Your Majesty, I thought you had read all of my report from last night, but it seems you haven't finished it yet. Do you really think those who can't even approach the box properly can investigate it? Truly? Kishir chuckled softly, provocatively retorting. It's the same as when you entrusted me with the recovery mission. Ultimately, the only ones who can truly perceive the power it holds are those awakened by its power. The cavalry has many with unique abilities. Certainly, they will yield far more meaningful results than the avaricious mages. I guarantee it. His flowing, unyielding argument had taken the breath away from the listeners. It felt as if anyone who didn't believe his confident proposition would be a fool. And if something dangerous happens during the investigation, what then? If that happens, which it won't, I will take full responsibility. Even if you have to give up your position as the commander? At the Emperor's slow question, the breath of cavalry members hitched. Even the abundant sunlight pouring in through the large windows seemed to freeze in that moment. Yudhir also furrowed his brow, and not having expected the Emperor to go so far, he had assumed that as his only sibling he would receive some leniency, but that wasn't the case. The Emperor was a much more tougher opponent than he had thought. But Kishir alone burst into laughter as if the Emperor had just made a humorous jest. Are you that worried about me? I hardly know what to do with such concern at my age. Concern? It sounded more like a threat to everyone. The same thought flickered and passed through everyone's mind in that moment. Chapter 52. Duke of Peleta. This is no joke. Answer my question. Very well. If something unsavory occurs while my cavalry and I are investigating, I will take responsibility and step down from my position as commander. Does that sound acceptable? His response was straightforward, but it only served to harden the Emperor's already grim expression. He stared at Kishir for a long moment before letting out a deep sigh. You have 10 days. That's not enough time. If you are granting a favor, please extend it a bit more. The Emperor's brows furrowed as if looking at a disobedient child. Yudhir thought Kishir's audacity had finally tested the Emperor's patience, but he remained silent before speaking again. 1 month, not a day more. Only then did Kishir turn to look at his men. It was a casual gesture, as if he wanted to gauge their reaction. His gaze met Yudhir's, and his expression subtly changed. Is this acceptable? His eyes seemed to ask. Yudhir gave a tiny nod. Kishir promptly straightened up and bowed. Your Majesty, I appreciate your understanding. After smoothly ending the conversation, Kishir rose from his place. The cavalry members quickly followed suit, straightening their bent backs and legs. You may leave now. I have a few matters to discuss privately with His Majesty. Kishir's words were not surprising, as they had been briefed before they arrived. The men did not panic and immediately bowed before the Emperor and withdrew. Follow me. As soon as they left the Emperor's presence, Nathan, with his stolid expression, raised his hand to call them. Yudhir and the other men quietly followed. Are we returning to the carriage to wait for the commander now? After they had moved a considerable distance and were about to exit the 7th palace, Hind finally decided it was safe to voice her curiosity and asked Nathan. We will return to the carriage, but we won't wait for the commander there. Then where? We are heading to the Black Pigeon in the second wall. Nathan's response was concise and calm. The Black Pigeon? What's that? Do you remember going to the Blue Crown when you registered for the cavalry test? It's similar, but higher up. It's where all the affairs of the nation are processed. In response to the curious elder siblings, Gakane kindly answered. True to his word, the Black Pigeon was one of the core institutions that upheld the Or Empire. It handled administration and diplomacy, as soon as all other minor affairs that needed to be dealt with in the palace. Ydir surmised that Nathan was heading there because it was probably related to the palace's internal affairs, which dealt with the running of the imperial household. The emperor's order will require administrative work, so sooner the better. I see. Why is it named that way? I'm not sure about that. Gakane scratched his head and flashed an embarrassed smile. But as Nathan, who probably knew the answer, was about to reply with an indifferent face, someone unexpectedly chimed in. It's because they're constantly sending and receiving messages, working without rest. The name is an old joke that the pigeons worked so hard that they didn't have time to clean themselves, so they became black with dirt. Kana? Gakane and Eldor siblings turned in surprise. Kana, who had been following silently with her head bowed down until now, had spoken for the first time. How did you know that? A long time ago, I heard it somewhere. Kana's response was soft and vague. Gakane and the Eldor siblings seemed to accept her answer, but Nathan closed his mouth with a peculiar expression. Ydir too narrowed his eyes. She heard it somewhere? Even if he had responded, his answer would probably have been just as evasive. However, the reason Ydir knew the answer was because he had worked and lingered in the palace in his previous life, gaining all sorts of information. A commoner growing up normally without a family name wouldn't have known it even by chance. Rumors associated with the name of the Blue Crown official could be picked up by the commoners living nearby, but the Black Pigeon official was different. Even Gakane, who had grown up in a reputable family, was unaware of such minor and meaningless information. What was Kana doing knowing about it? What was he supposed to think? Only then did Ydir realize that he knew absolutely nothing about Kana's family circumstances or personal information. Thanks to his memories from his previous life, he knew at least a little bit of information of the other cavalry members, but Kana was a person he met for the first time in this life. Unlike Gakane, she did not freely discuss her information. He had thought her as a sociable person who got along easily with her colleagues, but it was surprising to realize that she had this secretive side. Even if Ydir was surprised, how had the others felt? The most likely possibilities are she was related to someone working in the palace, or she hid her identity. It must be one of the two. The latter was less likely. Before the last name bestowment ceremony, Kishir would have thoroughly checked the identity of each member to be bestowed upon. Kishir Lahore, who seemed to be a carefree person who only knew how to laugh on the outside, was actually more meticulous and careful in his work than anyone else. It was his nature to investigate again before the bestowment ceremony, even if it was a matter that he had already been investigated when accepting them into the cavalry. So, if he had investigated Kana and concluded she was a commoner, there was no need to doubt that. Therefore, Ydir decided to put some weight on the possibility of the former. Those who work within the palace, or who have enough access to know the detailed internal affairs, are all nobles. But in the case of the Black Pigeon official, there are also middle-ranking managers and deputies who are chosen for their competence. In a few years, awakeners would break into key positions and receive titles, changing the situation. But so far, that was the structure. So, if Kana was related to one of them, the likelihood was high that she was among those of the suspected status. It might be a completely different third possibility. Whatever the situation, I hope it's not a big problem. Ydir's gaze turned to Kana, who wore a dark expression. Nathan, who had been leading them silently and skillfully crossing the paths between palaces, stopped at the moment and raised a hand. We are nearing the boundary of the wall. I will represent us during the inspection, so all you need to do is stay quiet behind me. As they had been riding the imperial carriage until now and hadn't had to face an inspection directly, a slight tension swept over the faces of the members. As Nathan had said, the inspection post was soon revealed. Inside the first wall, where only the imperial family resided in the palace, it was extremely quiet, with hardly anyone wishing to come or go. The expressions of the knights guarding the checkpoint were utterly relaxed. I would like to head towards the second wall. What is your name? I am Nathan Zuckerman, an adjutant of Duke Paleta. The knight's gaze shifted from Nathan, who was clad in armor adorned with the Duke's family crest, towards the cavalry members wearing identical black uniforms. They merely glanced at the cavalry members, not bothering to ask for their names. Understood. Please pass through. The members of the cavalry were surprised to how easily they were granted passage. Yet they realized from the knight's glances that they had assumed the cavalry members were new recruits brought along by Nathan, but he decided to say nothing. After all, Nathan had probably anticipated this and had offered to undergo the checkpoint procedures first. Being mistaken was actually beneficial for them, as it expedited the checkpoint process. Nathan courteously bowed his head in a gesture of acknowledgement before striding past the checkpoint without hesitation. As soon as they passed through the checkpoint, the path widened dramatically, and the number of people passing by exploded. Huge buildings of various architectural styles were revealed. The empire's court, built immediately after the founding of the empire, was clean and majestic with a single floor, while the new building of the palace, Magic Corps, boasted a dizzying height of over 10 floors. They were side by side, forming a harmonious blend that was typical of the Second Wall district, an area where all the institutions representing the empire gather. Yudhir murmured the nickname of the area within the Second Wall as he looked around. It's been a while. With time, the cavalry headquarters will appear among them. He turned his head towards the location where the cavalry headquarters has been in his memory. Now it has just been an inconspicuous small auxiliary palace. In his previous life, the palace had been expanded and increased in floors to become the cavalry headquarters. The headquarters managed the operations of the cavalry branches scattered throughout the empire and took on missions requiring coordination with other institutions. Yudhir's official office had also been located there. Have we already crossed the wall? I didn't see anything. How did that happen? Eldor siblings, who were distracted by the surrounding scenery, belatedly realized that they had fully entered the second district and were taken aback. Nathan, who had been walking silently, seemed to think he should answer their question, so he slightly slowed his pace and opened his mouth. We have already crossed the wall. When? Just after we pass the checkpoint. The first wall is said to be in the form of a road paved with special magical stones, forming a circle and covering the entire area. They built a garden over it to deliberately conceal it, so it's natural that you wouldn't have noticed its existence. Ah, only then did the elder siblings' expressions change, as if they just remembered that the garden around the Sun Palace has been unusually long. Gokane, who had been quietly listening, also seemed excited by this new information, his cheeks flushing slightly.